It's another edition of Time About the Movies. We're wrapping up July 1990. We've got 3 movies to look at, so let's not waste any time. Let's get right to it. Let's start with the first movie, the courtroom thriller, Presumed Innocent, starring Harrison Ford. Of course, this is based off of the novel by Scott Turow. It actually came out in 1987, but they actually had already started work on the movie in '86 over at United Artists before it eventually moved over to Warner Brothers. And as far as the movie itself goes, it's really good. It's a really good courtroom thriller. It's a good thriller in general because mostly because of Harrison Ford. Usually Harrison Ford doesn't pick a bad movie. Every once in a while, maybe he'll pick a movie that's very underwhelming, but he will usually give it his all. And this is one of those movies where he's definitely given it his all in this performance. And you have a great cast here. Greta Scacchi as the woman who eventually gets killed. Bonnie Bedelia playing Ford's wife. Brian Dennehy, Raul Julia, Paul Winfield, Greta Scacchi. I just mentioned Greta Scacchi, but yeah, it's a great thriller. It's a thriller that definitely keeps your interest throughout the course of the movie. You keep wondering whether or not Ford actually did this or was behind this, or as somebody who's never read the book before, your interest keeps getting piqued about how this is going to go, like how is this going to pan out in the end. And it does lead to a good thriller. It's a good thriller in general. Like you have great writing here, a good direction, good acting, a great score by John Williams, and a great cast to work off of. It's a very good movie. It's a really solidly made film. And it was a huge hit at the time. I think it made something like around $83 million, which is unprecedented for a thriller like this. Usually a lot of courtroom thrillers don't usually make that kind of money, especially during the summertime, but this was one of those rare successes that really surprised a lot of people, and especially in a summer where usually in a season where you have the big blockbusters, big sequels, big budget movies, but here's this movie that comes around, really surprises everybody, and it's just like, you can see why. It's a well-made movie. If this movie had been released in the fall, maybe this could have been considered for Oscar consideration, but the Academy Awards, anything that doesn't come out between September and December, they barely will even touch, so. But anyway, yeah, that's Presumed Innocent, and need I say more? It's a pretty good movie, so let's go on to the next movie. A very interesting movie, to say the least. It's John Ritter in Problem Child. It's an interesting movie because of, well, a lot of things. Well, for one thing, this movie was heavily panned by critics. It was a movie that, if you go to Rotten Tomatoes, I believe it has a 0% on Rotten Tomatoes. And usually if a movie has a 0% on there, chances are the movie is really terrible, like one of the worst movies ever made. And yet this movie really didn't matter to a lot of people. Even though there was no Rotten Tomatoes in 1990, people went to go see this movie. I mean, it made back its budget of $10 million in the first weekend and went on to gross almost 6 times that amount after it was all said and done. It made around $55 million domestically, which is incredibly unexpected for a movie that was slashed by critics all over the country. And I don't know why. I mean, it's because I've watched this movie before. I remember watching it as a kid. There's nothing really all that special about it, but I think it's because it is so mean-spirited and so cruel and just so insanely over the top and ridiculous that people just admire what they were able to do here. I mean, John Ritter is really working his butt off in this movie, as is Amy Yazbek. Gilbert Gottfried, rest in peace. He's in this movie. He's very good here. Michael Richards is very fun in this. Jack Warden's very good. The kid, Michael Oliver, he's a complete asshole, but he's a fun asshole to watch. It's weird. It's a movie that I feel like should be hated more, but watching it again, I really don't see. I mean, it's not that bad of a movie. It's actually kind of a fun, nostalgic cult movie. You can see why it has this cult following to it. And I think mostly because I've seen movies like Clifford where they try to do the same thing, except with Martin Short as the little kid when he's an adult, and Charles Grodin as the father, which did not work well at all. We'll get to that one when we get to that one. But I think it's also because of the writing of Scott Alexander and Larry Karzeski, if I'm even pronouncing that right. But These two guys also wrote Ed Wood. They also wrote a number of movies. They also wrote, I'm trying to think of what else they wrote, 1408. They also wrote Problem Child 2, which, I mean, it's one of those things where it's just like, they know how to make a fun, dark, black comedy, and the results speak for itself. This is a fun movie. Probably not a great movie overall in terms of story and just the tone of the movie, but it's just a fun movie all around. It's a ridiculously stupid movie, but it's a good, fun, ridiculously stupid movie. It's a movie that definitely deserves the cult following. It's not a great movie, but it's just so fun that you can't help but enjoy it. So that's my thoughts on Problem Child. So let's go ahead and move on to the last movie, and that is Chicago Joe and the Showgirl. This comes from Bernard Rose, who we looked at another one of his movies a couple of years ago with Paper House, and after this he would do Candyman in '92. So he has some decent films to his credit, and this is a pretty decent film. It's not a great movie all around, but it has enough in there to really appreciate it. Mostly from the casting of Kiefer Sutherland and Emily Lloyd, and also Patsy Kensit. You also have Liz Fraser, John Lahr, Harry Fowler, and it's a pretty enjoyable movie. Is it a great movie? Probably not, but it's a movie that I think works well because of the performances given to these people. I like the music in this movie. You have both Hans Zimmer and Shirley Walker. Shirley Walker, of course, would later go on to do Batman the Animated Series and Tiny Toon Adventures. And you have Hans Zimmer, who went on to become a great composer in his own right. There is a lot here that works. Does it work all the way through? No, it's very formulaic at times, but the performances do carry it through, and you do get invested in this story. Toy boat. You do get invested in the story. I almost did it again. You do get invested in this story, and I'm keeping that in. So, yeah, you do get invested in the story. You do get invested in this mystery that goes on. So, yeah, I'd say this movie is definitely worth it. Is it something you need to rush out and see? Not really. If you just want to see the best works of Kiefer Sutherland or Emily Lloyd, this will definitely work out for you. It's perfectly fine for what it is. It could have been a whole lot better, but it is good for what it is. But that's my thoughts on Chicago Joe and the Showgirl. So with that said, that's going to wrap up another edition of Time About the Movies. We jump into August the next time we meet up here. We've got Young Guns 2. We have Spike Lee's follow-up to Do the Right Thing, Mo Better Blues. We have one of the most underrated animated movies of all time. One of the most underrated movies of all time, the DuckTales movie, Treasure of the Lost Lamp. And we also have Whit Stillman's Metropolitan. So 4 movies to look at when we meet up here again on Sunday. In the meantime, if you want to see more videos like this, check out the playlist on the next page, check out the previous episode, and I'll see you guys on Sunday for another video. If you're going to check out some new videos tomorrow, we'll have Movie Stop, and then we'll have the new Multiplicity episode, where I look at the newest copies of Ghostbusters that I have, so hopefully you'll check those out. If you're not, I'll see you guys on Sunday for the next TATM, and until then, take care.